heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond. This is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
Live from sunny San Francisco, I'm Caroline Hyde.
And I'm Ed Ludlow. This is a special edition of Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, we'll bring you live coverage from our technology event as we speak with the CEOs and visionaries that are driving change in Silicon Valley and beyond.
Now, Ed, this hour we're speaking with the CEOs of Arm, of Hugging Face, of Writer AI, and more as part of our live special.
And a lot more to come. We'll push ahead to our keynote speakers later today, and that includes Adam Newman, Whitney Wolfhard, Evan Spiegel, and more. And while it may not be a surprise to anyone tuned in, it's certainly not a surprise to us. Artificial intelligence is probably the overriding theme of the event. It's AI everything, even in some cases if you're not an AI company.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be, even if you're not the AI company at heart, you're thinking about how you adapt to it, push it forward, bring out the productivity. But ultimately, how do we live up to the hype? Yeah. The valuations are so extraordinary in the private markets. They've been pretty heady in the public markets as well. Are we really seeing the level of productivity and growth and real use cases to vindicate it?
These events are always very interesting, very engaging. Everyone's very positive. But I would say in the background, there's a talent war, frankly, and people are running out of cash. So we've got to ask those difficult questions too.
And geopolitics. How are you navigating the issue of China as well? So much to talk about. But in the here and the now, we're talking about one key infrastructure play when it comes to artificial intelligence. We're, of course, going to be talking about the chip design firm Arm, which has really bounced off of its lows in terms of its share price throughout the trading of today. We're currently over the last 2 days down by 1.3%, coming out after the bell with its earnings. Tepid forecast, Ed, was what the market seemed to be focusing in on, even though they absolutely smashed it in terms of their fiscal fourth quarter numbers and their first quarter look ahead. Let's dig into some of that caution with Rene Haas, who's the Arm CEO. Rene, wonderful to have time with you. And look, there does seem to be a worry about your full year forecasts. Are you being cautious?
Well, thanks both for having me, Ed and Caroline. We just came off a record year in terms of revenue. We were up 20%, a little bit over 20%, our fiscal 23 from 2022. And we're actually forecasting even higher growth this year, north of 20%. And we also signaled to the markets yesterday that in 25, 26, 27, we see that growth continuing. So we have incredible visibility to our business, and we're very, very confident of this growth rate going forward.
We're just seeing your shares actually tick into positive territory, Rene, up now 0.6%. The underlying story is the build out in AI infrastructure, right? We're talking about data center powered by GPUs. Your numbers were good. Tell me about the underlying demand then, about the long term and the addressable market you think is either intact or is not.
Well, I think this AI build-out, as you describe, or maybe said another way, just expanding capacity to run these foundation models, to do more and more training, to do more and more inference, we really are only at the very beginning. Because when you start to think about the capabilities that this could unleash, whether it's around healthcare, pharma research, productivity gains, call centers, we're still in the very, very early days. That all starts with having to do this level of training and inference in the cloud, but it ultimately will find itself into every single edge device, whether that's a PC, your smartphone, your car, and whether it's all those devices I've mentioned, from the data center to the edge devices, they all run on ARM. So we have incredible visibility to where this is all going, which is why we're very confident in the growth rates. They're also one of the big problems you've got with all of these AI data centers is around energy and power. So power efficiency being so key, it's what ARM is really good at. Increasingly, we're seeing the most complex applications moving to ARM, and the most sophisticated training chip on the planet that was just announced, Grace Blackwell, well, that's based on ARM.
Okay, so you're managing to really think that you're going to be the server play as well as the PC play, the cell phone play. And I want to focus in on the cell phone play, Rene, because that's been where your bread and butter has been in history. How are we looking from a smartphone perspective? Is the market looking strong to you? We've had many a mixed message coming from China demand, for example.
Overall, what we've seen in the smartphone market, particularly for ARM, has been quite a good growth rate in terms of royalties. Our version 9, which is now being used in many of the premium mobile phones, that drives a higher royalty rate for ARM. There's also more complex CPUs that go into that. That's also better for ARM. And going forward, Caroline, one of the things that we're seeing, and it's not just in smartphones, is that as these AI models are moving so fast, the hardware can't keep up with the software. The software innovation is happening so quickly that by the time the hardware is ready to run those models, everyone wishes they had more performance, they had more efficiency. So what does that mean for ARM? It's driving growth in our licensing activity. People are looking to do more and more, design chips faster and faster, and that's all good for us going forward. So I think going forward, you're going to see more and more innovation happening, not only in the smartphones, but across all these edge devices.
What's interesting, Renee, is it's hard to keep up with the pace of geopolitical change as well. The latest news coming that Huawei, of course, is not going to have access to Qualcomm, to Intel chips. You are, of course, a UK-based company, but are affected by US policies. Has this impacted your business, the limitations of Huawei's access to chip design, to chip technology, to licenses?
Yeah, so that issue that you're referring to specifically was when Huawei was placed on the entity list, I think 2019, 2020, companies had to apply for a license to exempt them to ship to Huawei. So a number of companies asked for those licenses, they got those licenses, and now those licenses are being revoked. We don't fall into that category in any way, shape, or form. We didn't apply for any licenses at the time to ship. We complied with the export controls as they were laid out. So there's really, it's a non-event for us in terms of what you're seeing with Qualcomm and or Intel.
We're speaking live to the ARM CEO, Renee Haas. We're on the ground here at Bloomberg Tech in San Francisco. Last week, Renee, Cristiano Amon was on the show telling Caroline and I, this is the year of the AI PC. You were asked about that on your earnings call last night, and you gave a slightly different answer. Maybe it's not the year of the AI PC, more the 12 to 36 month window, and you don't want to see just one PC supplier. You said you'd like to see 2 or 3. What's your beef with Qualcomm?
When I look at the PC ecosystem, one large ecosystem has already moved to ARM in a very big way. Apple is now 100% based on ARM. All the Apple silicon is based on ARM. And you see amazingly good products relative to what they've delivered. Fantastic battery life, performance, thin and light, no fans. When you think about the Windows market, it's a very different market. It's highly fragmented. You have lots of different players. The ecosystem matters. The channel matters. Price points matter. High-end gaming machines versus low-end devices that are like cloud-enabled. So what does all that mean? It generally has meant that breadth, vendor choice, multiple options to provide a full scope is what matters. And what I'm hearing is over the next couple of years, the Windows ecosystem is going to be able to afford that. And I think over the next 2-3 years, I do believe Windows on ARM will be real. I think you'll see multiple players, multiple price points, multiple units, and I think you'll see meaningful market share that we start to gain. The kind of performance you see in the other ecosystem, I think will find its way into the Windows ecosystem.
Renee, I wanted to talk about geography really quick. We're here in San Francisco, right? There's a lot about America's R&D focus on AI-related chips. Are you seeing this sort of equivalent activity in Europe, for example, or any of your customers outside of those markets?
Yeah, well, I'm in San Francisco today, too, so I will see you a little bit later. But in general, I think the geopolitics are something that all tech CEOs are now having to figure out and work with. AI models, foundation models, sovereign clouds, thinking about what level of training takes place in a country versus outside the country, where the weights sit, et cetera. So these are all the kind of things that politicians have never really had to think about in the past. So we're involved in a lot of those conversations, Ed, whether that's in the United States, whether that's in Europe, and really just trying to understand it, because I think lawmakers in all these jurisdictions are just trying to figure it all out. And as I mentioned before, as the software and models are moving so fast, it's difficult for everyone to keep up. But we are central to all those discussions.
Rene, what's been keeping up is your valuation. Boy, I mean, do you think there's too much exuberance around AI valuations out there? Are you going to make the most of it by, well, we talked at one point of listing in the UK too?
Yeah, I don't think about the valuations as much as I just think about the AI opportunity, which I frankly believe is undercalled in terms of just what it's going to mean relative to society and what it can do for our planet. I think, again, we are in very, very early days in terms of the capabilities of what this can unleash for our society. Incredibly excited to be part of it, but I don't think we're part of a hype cycle at all. I think there's a lot of innovation taking place, and frankly, the innovation that's taking place and the inventions that we're seeing, it's just breathtaking. So no, I don't personally view it as a hype cycle at all.
Rene Haas, ARM CEO, really grateful. You'll actually be here with us later today on site at Bloomberg Tech. Your stock opened pretty low, and I think it's just a little bit higher now during the conversation we've had. Thank you so much. All right, coming up on the program, we're going to be joined by Clem DeLong, CEO of Hugging Face. That's coming up next. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg Technology. Welcome back to this special edition of Bloomberg Technology, live in San Francisco at the Bloomberg Tech event. And artificial intelligence, surprise, surprise, is sort of the overarching theme. We've got a pretty good guest to talk about that with and discuss all things large language model with Clem DeLong, CEO of Hugging Face. You made this prediction, which we're going to hold you to account on, that by the end of this calendar year, and I appreciate we're not even halfway, open source models would be equivalent to the best closed source models. Give us a status check of that prediction, please.
I think it's already happened. Open source now is better than closed source for most use cases. We've specialized, customized models on the companies like datasets. I have my Meta Ray-Ban glasses here that are powered by Llama 3. Right? We're seeing so many now use cases being powered by open source models. And most of the big tech companies are now publishing open models. Just last month, we've seen Apple releasing open models on Hugging Face. We've seen NVIDIA, we've seen Snowflakes, we've seen Databricks, we've seen Microsoft. All of them now are publishing open models.
There may be some people in attendance who don't agree with him, which is why I asked the question.
Well, also, Microsoft published one and then quickly withdrew it from some of the reporting because they hadn't stress tested the large language model enough. They hadn't whittled out some of the toxicity checks in particular. Yeah. How are you feeling about the way in which large language models are growing and the way in which governance is developing around it?
Well, we're starting to see that the most important question is concentration of power, right? For such an important technology, you don't want a world where just a few companies are controlling it.
But that is the world we live in.
I don't think so. I think more and more what we're seeing is that with open source, you can actually distribute power more. And you want to reduce the gap between the most powerful companies and the rest of the world. Not only other companies, but policymakers, non-profits, academia, and all of that. And that's the purpose of open source. It reduces the gap between the most powerful companies and the rest of the world. And that's what creates kind of like a sustainable, balanced future for AI and technology as a whole.
It's a conversation we're going to have all day long. And you point out that basically open source allows more groups to go to work on it. The problem is, as we're learning, the tens of billions of dollars it takes to train models with, tens or hundreds of billions of parameters, and then you go lower down. And now what we're hearing is that actually there are the folks doing this running out of cash. Are you seeing that as well?
So it's more or less true because, for example, now you can use Llama 3 that really has been costly, but that Meta has released and fine-tune it for a very small amount of money. That's why on Hugging Face there's over 1 million models that have been trained by companies, and a lot of these companies are very small and don't have really big budget. I feel like today every single company has to build their own AI. Otherwise, they run the risk of being left behind. And that's what we're seeing, and it doesn't require any more really big budget. An interesting point, though, that we're going to see this year, though, is that we'll need to find for AI companies better business models. That's what kind of like you hinted at. It's something we really focused on at Hugging Face. We are lucky and grateful to be close to profitable, which is very unusual for AI companies. But we're starting to see that there are some ways to generate revenue and not burn insane amounts of compute for AI startups today.
I mean, how, on that profitability perspective of yours, how many paying customers do you now have? Can you give us an update? You've got 1 million models. What about paying customers?
We have more than 10,000 paying customers. Out of the over 100,000 organizations, more than 4 million AI builders that are using our platform. And I think we found the right balance between monetizing, especially with like big companies that are using the platform in private.
Enterprise companies.
Exactly, in order to fund all the free community open source work that we're doing, and that is always going to stay open source and free, of course.
I want to go back to what Ed was saying, though, about people running out of cash. You actually put out a really interesting call on X, basically saying, look, I'm here if you need me. Hugging Face is here if there are good people out there building interesting businesses, but you're running out of money, we could be a home for you.
Yeah.
Are you making acquisitions? Is it acqui-hiring that goes on then?
We make some acquisitions. We're going to have interesting announcements in the next few weeks, actually.
Oh, don't tease us. What is the interesting?
But I think in general in AI, you're going to see more and more M&A. Because as you said, I think a lot of companies took very risky bets. A lot of them are running out of money. And at the same time, you have other companies like Hugging Face and others that are successful enough to be homes. Some of these M&A is going to be weird, right? We've seen that happening a little bit with tech, with some unusual
a marriage
examples.
Of necessity rather than choice, maybe.
Yes.
One thing that's good about summits like these, Bloomberg Tech, by the way, we can go around the room and ask who you're going to be shopping for. That's going to be interesting. But you get all these people in one place. You've also used the time that you've been in San Francisco, because you're up in Seattle, right?
Miami.
Oh, Miami, apologies.
Yes.
You've been hiring, you've been interviewing candidates. Is that just a function of the best candidates being here in this city? Or how wide are you casting your net?
Yeah, I think San Francisco is still the heart of technology and AI, right? There's so much talent, so many interesting companies, so many interesting big technology companies being here, that it's important for us to kind of like have a foot on the ground here. We have a team already here, but we're also hiring a community lead for Hugging Face here.
Applications being taken?
Yes. There's a really massive fight and struggle for AI talents right now, with inflation of packages everywhere. But what we're seeing is that when you have a mission that's like interesting to candidates, like with open source, then you can attract really good talents. That's one of the reasons why also we're seeing big tech doing more and more open source, right? If you look at Meta, with all the great work that they're doing on open source.
You keep on, I mean, you've only really mentioned number 3. You're trying to cajole Google into going even more open source?
I think as long as companies contribute to the world and to the field with open source, with open research, I think it benefits everyone. I think we've lost a little bit this way in the US for the past few years. If you look at AI 5 years ago, most of it was open source and open science. It changed a little bit when some companies started to make money and change a little bit their approach to things. But I think it would be positive for the world to get back to an AI domain that is more open, more transparent, more inclusive.
You asked a calendar date now, by the way, because you told us you're going to announce some news when you're ready.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
We're holding you to
here.
it.
Thank you.
Clem DeLong, joy to have you with us. We're going to let you get to your breakfast where he's holding court here, CEO of Hugging Face. What a great conversation. Welcome back to this very special edition of Bloomberg Technology, live in the heart of San Francisco. All the great and the good of industry movers, shakers when it comes to artificial intelligence, in particular the academics, but the companies behind it, the CEOs. And notably also the investors. And this is an interesting one for the investor base, right? We potentially have a new large language model getting a decent valuation.
Yeah, so I think what we reported last night is that xAI, the AI company started by Elon Musk and which he built out pretty quickly, is closing this kind of mega funding round, $18 billion valuation. The thing is that we've learned, right, over the last year or more, that is not actually that eye-watering a number. The numbers involved are not that eye-watering.
And wasn't he actually raising an awful lot considering an 18 billion valuation?
Yes, I think we've reported sort of up to $6 billion. The thing is that the compute costs are mega.
Yeah.
And I took a phone call this morning saying, look past the cash and start asking whether xAI has got access to the GPUs. Now, Elon Musk has an existing relationship with NVIDIA, Jensen Huang in the Tesla context, but it's good gossip for the Bloomberg Tech event. It's a good thing to discuss in the hallway.
And ultimately, who are the investors? What we've seen, I think, really the rise in 2023 and 2024 has been corporate VC.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Or strategic investor.
Yeah, you've got the Sequoia Capitals being incredibly active, who we're going to have Sequoia Capital on a little bit later. But they're more at the seed of the funding, the Series A, Series B. But the amount of money necessary for these large language models means NVIDIA has to be a player or Google has to be.
And what I heard is that Jared Birchall, who's head of Musk's family office, has been in the Middle East talking to sovereigns. A lot of that stuff going on.
Welcome back to a special edition of Bloomberg Technology right here in San Francisco. An event is upon our hands that is all to do with artificial intelligence. And also to continue that conversation right here, right now at the Bloomberg Tech Summit is Writer CEO May Habib, who joins us now, who has been doing generative AI for the enterprise before everyone else got with the program. You built your business in 2020. You've got an enormous chunk of change from Iconic Capital and other key investors. And how does it feel with everyone trying to surge in on the enterprise opportunity here? How are you standing out and making sure that you keep the key like Ubers and clients that you already have?
Yeah, it's actually really exciting to see all of the investment, right? We've been working on this, my co-founder and I, for 10 years, previously in a machine translation startup. And so to see all of this attention is actually amazing. But the way we stand out, I think, is with a really differentiated platform that helps enterprises with the last mile, which is 90% of the work in AI.
May, you've been on the show a number of times over the last 2 years or so. And each time I always reflect on sort of the rate of change for the industry, but also growth of your company. Clem DeLong of Hugging Face just gave us some numbers about the sort of size and scope of how they're doing. He said close to profit or near profit or something like that. But just tell us about your company and how it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible rate of change. When we started the company, we knew AI was going to be better at people, at reading and writing, and that has certainly happened. We now say if you can write it, you can build it, because AI is not just the technology, it's the way to build new technology. But building AI apps is actually still quite difficult. And so the rate of change of just what we've been able to do, I mean, it's hundreds of enterprise customers, hundreds of thousands of users, thousands of applications that are in production. So a lot of this kind of question around like how you get applications from POC to scale, you know, we've been doing that for years now, and it's just had a tremendous impact on the growth of the business.
You have some relatively new work on models at Writer. Tell us about the kind of the latest and greatest on the tech side of your offering.
Yeah. So over the past few months, we've introduced Vision as a capability into the platform. We've launched Palmyra in 32 languages at really, really high quality, beating human benchmarks, our customers tell us. And next up for us are large reasoning models. So software that writes software, which we're really excited about, being able to go from, you know, work substitution to real work reinvention and orchestration using AI.
At the very start, you said basically 90% of the work isn't just getting the right large language model in the door, but it's implementing it. It's all the other bells and whistles that go to ensure that you get operational efficiencies, that you put it to your own workflows. What are some of the best ways you're seeing it being harnessed? What are some of the worst ways? Because everyone's still waiting for this eureka moment where all of our exuberance around AI actually makes a real difference when we're at the work.
100%. There are 1,500 LLMs, right? If large language...
1,500?
Yeah, I mean, and they can pass the MCAT and the LSAT. So if LLMs were the answer, everyone would have the generative AI program of their dreams, right? But that's not the case. There's so much work to get the data and the context and the workflow from the business user into the application, right? And that's what our platform does. It's this collaborative interface that combines the LLM with all of those building blocks. And that's where the magic is, because the LLMs themselves need so much more context about the business to be able to do what customers need them to do.
You said before that basically large language models are going to be commoditized. The foundational models are going to be commoditized, particularly from a consumer perspective. Where then does the value ultimately end up lying? Because there are so many people trying to fix problems using generative AI. A lot of them are coming to you to try and be bought or helped at the moment, I assume, because they're running out of money themselves.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of air being sucked out of the room by big tech, right? But there's still a ton of opportunity for startups. Microsoft has to build for the lowest common denominator, right? So individual productivity is very different than team productivity and team workflows. So even though it feels like we're going to go through sort of a big consolidation phase, I do think there's still a ton of opportunity for startups. We have made a small acquisition that we'll announce soon, and I think we'll make others. So there certainly is a real high barrier for entry to come in and serve the enterprise, but it's still, there's so much blank white open space for startups to help enterprises compete.
It's interesting, maybe, that you use the C word, consolidation. I don't think Clem DeLong went as far as using the word consolidation, but I think, you said something a moment ago about big tech sucking the oxygen out of the room. It goes to the open source closed debate. I assume you sit on the open source side, but just weigh in.
So we're kind of in the middle. So our models are proprietary. A bunch are on Hugging Face, so later generations of models. But our latest models are closed source. But by being in the middle, what enterprises really need is the ability to audit, right, and have the transparency around training data and all sorts of things related to the models. They don't really want like the last mile cumbersomeness of necessarily like fine-tuning or running the models themselves is what we're finding. And so like in the kind of sucking the air out of the room, the confusion around what vendors to turn to and how to actually get great applications shipped, that's where I think there's still a lot of confusion in the enterprise.
And I think there's still all that work to be done to minimize hallucinations, to ensure that we're seeing a clarity of where the underlying data is coming from and you're not having copyright issues.
Yeah.
Give us clarity on your business now. Have you been approached to be bought? Are you remaining independent? Are you raising more money?
So there's a really long, I think, product journey for us to really realize our vision. So I'm really excited about remaining independent. It used to be a year ago that I would say, LLMs are for the drudgery, the work you don't want to do. Today, the capabilities are so incredible, they're as good as us. But the future is work where you get to do the work you want to do and LLMs do the rest, right? Because one person's drudgery is another person's creative passion. And that kind of compelling vision for the future of work, we're not seeing enterprises come up with yet. We talk to hundreds of companies a week, and that really feels missing right now. Kind of executives painting a vision for what AI looks like inside their companies in a way that brings people along. And so there's a lot to do, both in, kind of bringing our vision into the world and helping companies achieve theirs.
Writer, CEO, May Habib. Great to catch up here at Bloomberg Tech in San Francisco.
Can I just say, she flies every week from San Francisco to London and back.
That's what
That
we're hearing, the world of the CEO in the world of AI on a plane. Coming up here, we're going to be joined by Stephanie Zhang, partner at Sequoia, for her take on investing in AI startups. Stay with us, we'll be right back. This is Bloomberg Technology. Welcome back to this special edition of Bloomberg Technology. We're back together live in San Francisco at Bloomberg Tech, our annual conference. And here at the Tech Summit, We've got to talk about investing. The first checks into those new and early AI startups. We have a fantastic guest for today's VC Spotlight, Stephanie Jan, partner at Sequoia. You guys are so busy. You are writing lots of checks, but the new companies being founded in AI are not the same as they were 1 year ago, and certainly not 18 months or 2 years ago. Just give us a sort of timeline of where we are now in this industry wave.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Ed and Caroline. It's an absolute joy to be here. We're at a really interesting time in AI today. 7 years from the advent of the transformer, 4 years since the advent of the GPT-3 moment. I think 2024 is going to be a monumental year for AI, and here's why. I think this year is going to be a step function leap in digital intelligence, everything from video to AI agents to robotics. I also think that this year is going to be the year we see a shift in the ecosystem to a thriving ecosystem with many winners in the models area, across closed source, open source, large models, small models. And third, I also think this is the year we start to see AI commercialization at scale. And at Sequoia, we've been really busy, as you noted. We're highly selective about the companies that we partner with. But this year, in just the first 4 months alone, we've invested in 10 new AI companies, everything from new foundation models to new AI native applications.
I love that you went through the history, like 7 years ago since the transmission model. I mean, it was 20 years ago, just over, that Sequoia wrote the first check into NVIDIA, and now we think is still that company really owning really the oxygen in the room and
they've
indeed the
become an
valuation.
investor, right? They're writing checks of their own as a strategic investor.
And I'm interested, therefore, exactly to Ed's point, how competitive is it out there to get those first checks in? Who are you seeing come in? Is it the corporates that are wanting to write checks? Is it VCs wanting to write checks?
It's an incredible ecosystem right now with everyone pouring money into the AI ecosystem. I think it's very much reflective of the opportunity that we see in AI, the large market opportunity that is to come. I actually think that we're still in the very early innings of all of this. Well, you know, it's the classic saying of we overestimate in the short run, but we really underestimate in the long run. NVIDIA's done a wonderful job of being such a critical hold in the ecosystem, with hardware driving compute, but also now with so many software tools and the entire developer ecosystem they've built around them. So I think that we're just in the early innings and there's a lot more to come.
We were just speaking with Clem from Hugging Face and indeed May Habib, who highlight the fact that it's really expensive to do this, and NVIDIA chips are a pretty penny. How are you seeing the companies that you back are able to sustain the investment they need to make? How do you make sure the checks you write are going in the right direction and not just sort of going into the pool of training money?
Yeah. Well, I think that the classic conventional wisdom is that incumbents with scale, data, capital, and distribution have a natural advantage. And that's absolutely correct. It also costs a lot to build these models because of compute and for AI talent. But I also think that there are so many nimble ways for a startup to compete. Specifically, I think the next leap is really around, one, high-quality data. Okay. Specifically, high-quality labels of data and targeted domain-specific data. Second, it's really about what you do with that data. Reinforcement learning with human feedback, I think, will really shine in this next era. It's an idea derived from reinforcement learning, but here an agent actually also learns on the fly with human feedback. And that's what's so brilliant about ChatGPT, for example. And finally, I think that you really differentiate not just on model performance, which is where all the capital goes into, but it's also around product distribution and the entire product experience that you offer to the end customer.
You use the word incumbent. I think we should probably talk about who those incumbents are, because the point that May Habib of Writer made, and to a certain extent Clem from Hugging Face, is that big tech, and I think we're talking about Alphabet, Microsoft, in the first instance, are sucking the oxygen out of the room. From a capital perspective, a talent perspective, you invest at the pre-seed and seed stage. Do you find that to be true?
Well, I think that incumbents absolutely have an advantage, as we just outlined, but I also think that new startups have a shot. Scale.ai actually recently released a survey last week where they interviewed thousands of developers on their most popular models. And the ones that actually came into light were GPT-4, GPT 3.5, and Gemini as the most popular models used. But we're also starting to see new players come into play with models that are just as competitive in performance. I'm really excited about the open source model ecosystem enabling many more new players to come into play. Llama 3, for instance, is so powerful. The new 8 billion parameter model is a longer trained, small model that I think will become a really powerful building block for new developers to build new applications on top of and to build new models around it. It's going to drastically reduce the cost of what it takes to build new experiences.
We are increasingly talking about Meta and its competence in building large language models. You speak highly of them. Where do you see them? I think Zuckerberg said on the call last week, we want to be the world's leading AI company. Where are they in that journey?
I think that they have an incredible advantage. Not just because of the capital that they're willing to pour into play, but also because of the entire treasure trove of data that they hold. All this proprietary UGC content that they can really use to train their models. One of the things I'm really excited to see them enter the scene with this year is a new generative video foundation model, similar to what we saw with Sora and OpenAI. To me, the most powerful thing that unlocked was that the methodology we take for building large language models and digital intelligence works for video as well. You take a diffusion transformer model and you just scale it with enough video data and compute. And Meta has a wonderful advantage given the entire treasure trove of content they have to compete in the ecosystem. And then what they're doing with Llama 3, I think, is game-changing entirely. It opens the playing field for everyone, themselves, new startups, lowering the cost for a thriving ecosystem with many winners.
Come back when you've got more checks that you can announce in that thriving ecosystem. Such a joy to be here with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Caroline.
Thanks for stopping by. Sequoia partner, Stephanie Jan. Welcome back to this special edition of Bloomberg Technology. The heart of San Francisco, big event upon our hands. And every year, in fact, Bloomberg Business Week releases in tandem its list of tech ones to watch. Look, these are the startup founders, the big tech managers, the, well, key investors as well, who are playing a big role in shaping tech's future. And joining us now is one of these ones to watch. We're pleased to welcome Udit Madan, Amazon Vice President for, of course, the worldwide operations side of the business. Your first interview since taking on an enormous role of more than 1 million people that you manage. The focus of getting my package to me in the swiftest way, most cost-efficient manner as possible. Can I just ask what your day looks like? What does a day in Udit look like?
Well, first, Caroline and Ed, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here. For me, really my day starts fairly early in the morning, but it starts with thinking about the team I've got. We've got a very, very broad team all around the world. We've got 4,000 different locations that we operate around the world, and really it's focused on how do we continue to innovate on behalf of customers, but do it in a way that puts safety and people at the forefront. And so my day is really focused on innovation across 4 different spectrums: safety, really the customer experience with delivery speeds, innovating, especially with what's happening with technology, finding new ways, whether that's through robotics or operations, to make things more efficient and drive new customer experiences.
When you're talking about the technology, we're talking about everything from the fleets, right? So there's a transition to sustainable energy in the fleet context. Talking about robotics in the fulfillment centers, and dare I say AI in tracking the data. What's the biggest investment focus for you right now in technology rollout?
We've got technology all across our operations, and there's really 2 things that I would maybe thematically talk about. One is we do have a lot of investments in automation and robotics that are going on, especially with how quickly things are accelerating with generative AI. We have investments on really novel foundational models that look and use the high quality data that we've gathered and sourced as we ship tens of millions of products every day, and those are going to help make some of those robotic solutions more generalizable as well as make them more efficient. And the second is we've been working on a set of really inventive robotic solutions over the last few years that are finally reaching maturity and scale, and will start to roll out starting this year. Both those are really exciting and will be transformative for our operations.
I mean, you've got to be inventive because Andy Jassy is asking you to focus on costs. But I'm sure the innovation in a way does, longer term, once you made the investment, strip out some of the costs. But ultimately, does that come at the sacrifice of labor? How do you talk to those people that you were so keenly focused on to ensure that they feel that they're being augmented, not replaced?
You know, the best thing I can talk about is our history. We've deployed 750,000 robots over the last decade across our operations. We've done that while creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. And you know, what's really interesting, and not a lot of people know, is we've created dozens of new class of jobs, skilled jobs, technical jobs. And what we've learned in that process is that one of the most important things that you can do as a company in this world of generative AI and robotics is to really focus on investing in employees. So we've launched two different programs. One is the 2025 upskilling pledge that really helps train people for this new workplace of the future. And an AI Ready program that's generally available to everybody that's really focused on investing in helping provide AI skill training to over 2 million people. So really focusing on people alongside the investments we're making in generative AI and robotics.
We just have 30 seconds. What's your one personal goal for the year, something you want to achieve?
For me, there's more than one, but I'll try to answer it quickly. The first and the highest priority for us is safety, and we want to be the safest workplace across the industries we operate in, making measurable and really remarkable progress in that area. I want to continue to invest in that. And the second is to continue to improve the convenience for customers, and delivery speeds is an area of focus.
Udit, congratulations on being one of the key ones to watch. Phenomenal, the amount of people you manage, the young age that you are, Udit, Madam. We thank you, Amazon Vice President of Worldwide Operations. Meanwhile, from ones to watch of individuals to everything you've got to watch coming up, because this is going to be an amazing set of conversations. I'm going to be speaking with a key chip leader, of course. You're going to be speaking about the future of technology. Who have you got lined up?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Tom Oxley of Synchron, and I'm going to talk about brain implants and what the right method of putting a electrode into one's brain is.
I love
Casual.
that. Casual perspective. Renee James is joining me, Ampere CEO. Look, this is the question that, having just spoken with Renee, the other Renee in chips of ARM, where is the market share being taken by these newer players, taking from AMD, from Intel, even potentially NVIDIA?
Thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of Bloomberg Technology. It's great to be back together in the field, but we actually have a full day ahead. So many great guests. Stay with us. Thank you for tuning in from San Francisco at Bloomberg Tech 2024. This is Bloomberg.